They wanted me to make sure I showed what our distribution, energy distribution was. I'll tell you what, I think I'm going to stand right over here. Like most of the country, we're 60%, 58% here coal-fired generation. Virtually half of U.S.'s electric generation comes from coal. Natural gas is 25% of ours. Nuclear is 15%, and hydro is 2%. Southern Company, its prices are below national average for all of our operating companies. Safety is our top priority in our fleet, and we were just recently named Fortune Magazine's most admired utility. Okay, I wanted to highlight a few of the innovations that Southern Company and Alabama Power are involved in right now, because it gives you a picture of where our focus is. In 2010, we designed, built, and started up what was then the largest solar powered power plant in the U.S., 30 megawatts. Oh, thank you very much.
The first one.
30 megawatts worth of electric generation in New Mexico. Of course, the sun in New Mexico and Arizona is much better than the intensity is much better than it is here in the southeast. So we started there. About 3 weeks ago, another utility opened up their newest solar plant, which is slightly larger than ours. So we're the second largest solar facility. We currently are completing construction on the largest biomass to energy facility. It's located in Nacogdoches, Texas. Southern Company manages the Carbon Capture Center for the U.S. government. I'll talk more about that here in just a second. Southern is taking that technology at Wilsonville, Alabama, and using it for a power plant we're building in Mississippi, just over the state line from Alabama, and I'll talk about that. We also run the world's only Mercury Research Center. It's a facility located at Plant Crest in Pensacola, Florida. It's dedicated to finding ways to control the emissions of mercury that come along with coal. There is a large, you can't read this, large 25 megawatt demo of carbon capture and sequestration at one of the Alabama power plants in Barry at Mobile, Alabama. That particular project I'll discuss more fully here in a few minutes. And then we have a new nuclear plant that I'll discuss, and I know that's a topic of interest right now, and I'll discuss that briefly. In Alabama, at Wilsonville, at Plant Gaston, we operate the government's Power Systems Development Facility. It is really the only facility in the world that's dedicated towards preserving coal as one option for generating power in the future. It's designed to find ways to do that more cleanly and more efficiently than it's ever been done before. At this Power Systems Development Facility, we developed this technology called TRIG, Transport Integrated Gasifier. And it's a process of taking coal and cleanly converting it from a solid to a gas, very much like natural gas, and then using that natural gas in a combustion turbine to generate power. In 2011, just last month, I believe, this facility in the state of Alabama was named to the Alabama Engineering Hall of Fame. The technology that's been developed there, TRIG, will first be deployed in China, a plant that's being built just north of Hong Kong. We're partnering with another firm here in the U.S., and we're helping them to build this plant there. Then that technology will be deployed in Kemper County, Mississippi.
From which county?
Kemper County.
Kemper.
It's just over the state line, north of Meridian, just north of Meridian. It'll be a 582 megawatt plant. It will be the cleanest coal-fired facility in the world. This particular plant will capture 65%. It'll capture virtually all of its SO2 and NOx and particulate, but it will also capture 65% or 3 million tons a year of its CO2. And that's the first ever coal-fired power plant to do that. That CO2 will be put in a pipeline and used for enhanced oil recovery, both in the state of Mississippi as well as in Texas. It's being piped that far. One nice thing about this plant that I always like to highlight is water is an issue in the southeast as well. And at this facility, the water that's being used to create this power is treated effluent from the city of Meridian. Rather than Meridian having to deal with their water issue, that fluid is being piped up to this plant and being used for the purposes of power generation at this site. So it's a zero discharge plant. There's no water requirements from the river or wells, and there'll be no discharge. Next slide. So we've talked about the biggest solar plant in the country, the biggest biomass plant in the country, the cleanest coal-fired plant in the world, and now I'm back to Wilsonville, Alabama, where I want to talk briefly about how we're developing this technology to capture CO2 from our power plants, from any coal-fired power plant. There are various ways to do that. Of course, power plants, CO2 is produced because to get heat out of coal, you have to create CO2. That's the chemical process by which we generate our power. So then, how do we deal with that CO2 when the time comes? I can do it for our gasification fleet using a technology called pre-combustion. I can do it for our existing coal-fired fleet with a technology called post-combustion. And there's another process called oxy-combustion where I burn coal in only oxygen, not air. So the federal government looked at Wilsonville and said that's the place to put all of their work related to how you evolve the science of carbon capture. So we have 100 to 150 research engineers and scientists there in Wilsonville, Alabama, leading this country down the right path for how to preserve coal as a clean resource for the generation of coal and for the generation of power in the future. Remember, there are hundreds of years of coal reserves left. Those coal reserves half of them are western bituminous coal, western subbituminous coal, which is not the best coal, but it's very easy to mine. So it's available, needs a way to have its CO2 captured. So that's one of the aspects of this facility here at Wilsonville, is to try to make sure that the CO2 reduction technologies work for all coals, whether it be bituminous or subbituminous. Next slide. Here in Alabama also, so we had this existing fleet of coal-fired power plants. So here in Alabama, in Mobile, at Plant Berry, we're building a process plant with help from the federal government and Electric Power Research Institute. We're building this test facility to remove CO2 from existing coal-fired power plants. This facility will start up in middle of this year, middle of 2011. And it will strip all of the CO2 out of about 25 megawatts worth. We're taking a slipstream of the flue gas from that power plant. And it'll take all that CO2, it'll compress it, it'll take it into a pipeline and run it over to the citronella oil field and then inject it to first store in deep saline structures about 10,000 feet below the Earth's surface. And then later on it'll be used for enhanced oil recovery in Alabama citronella oil field. If you're not familiar, the citronella oil field is the largest oil field east of the Mississippi. And there's lots of reserves there, and oil, CO2 for enhanced oil recovery would help that process. Next slide. I decided to just hit nuclear head on. They wanted me to talk about nuclear. Southern Company, and all those other firsts that I mentioned a few minutes ago, we are also blessed with being the first to permit a brand new nuclear plant. This is being done over in Georgia, in Waynesboro, Georgia, at an existing nuclear site called Plant Vogtle. We're adding 2 units, Unit 3 and 4. We'll add about 2,200 megawatts to that plant with 2 new nuclear plants there. That's enough to power about 2 million homes just in that one facility. Like I said, it's the first new nuclear to be in site preparation. It's using the state-of-the-art advanced Westinghouse design. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, I just want to know geographically, where is Waynesboro?
Waynesboro is north of Augusta, sort of even further north of Savannah.
Okay.
It's
So north of I-20?
oh yes.
Okay.
Well, let's see. It's west of Atlanta. It's south of I-20, west of Atlanta.
East of it.
I mean east of Atlanta. I'm sorry. Thank you.
East
East of Atlanta. Yeah.
South of I-20?
Yeah. That's right. It's over on the Savannah River.
I got you.
Yeah.
I know where you
5 minutes? Okay. It uses Westinghouse's state-of-the-art AP1000 design. This is a brand new technology for nuclear. It's been developed over the last 20 years. It has lots of passive safety features. For example, it has water storage on site above the reactor that gravity feeds to the reactor to keep it cool. I know you've heard lots about how you keep these things cool and the use of fire trucks and pumping and all this sort of stuff. The new designs for nuclear plants won't have that. They'll have water storage at the plant site above the reactors that then flood the reactors automatically for keeping them cool. Lots of safety features associated with the facilities. I'm not the nuclear guy. I have worked in a nuclear plant though. In fact, I started my career with Southern Company in nuclear. Next slide. They wanted me to say something about hydro. Hydro is important to Southern Company. One of the things we have in the South is a lot of water. We operate 113 hydro units spread across 33 hydro plants in Georgia and Alabama. That's 2,485 total megawatts. If you compare that to the last slide, that means all of our hydro roughly equals what we're adding in nuclear to that one site over in Georgia. So, although we have a lot of hydro in terms of total megawatts, hydro's not a real big producer of electricity for you. It's a smaller producer. I think I said early on that it was about 2 to 4% of Southern Company. However, that creates 203,000 acres of reservoirs and lakes, and Alabama is in the top 10 in terms of hydro capacity in the U.S. So that gives you some idea of where we are and how big hydro is in the country. It produces a lot of power, but relative to everything else, it's not the biggest power producer. Next slide. I believe that was it. So I wanted me to touch on fossil, nuclear, and hydro, and then answer whatever questions you might have.
Actually, we're going to do questions. Sorry, we're going to do questions.